My name is Amy Wong. I run investments at NetEase, which is the VC arm of NetEase, the bigger NetEase, the game developer and publisher out of China. I've been at this role for the last almost 4 years. So I met with a lot of great studios around the world. And I'm going to talk a little bit about China, what's going on there right now, and some of the things that independent studios can do to find the right partner in terms of publishing and or investments. So currently what's going on in China is huge, massive consolidation in the market, in the mobile space. For the top 20 grossing positions, you see 10 publishers dominating that space. So the total revenue generated by those 20 games is about 340 million in 1 month. That accounts for about 60% of the iOS market. And the monthly average revenue goes from about 7 million per game to 60 million per game. So those are big numbers, but these are games by the big publishers with big IPs and also very big production. And NetEase and Tencent accounts for about 70% of the top 20 revenue. So it's actually very much a consolidated market, kind of like what's going on in the US market as well. And in terms of production and marketing, these are numbers you're looking at, very high production values by studios that are either internal or external studios that are highly experienced in game development. And a lot of these games have IPs, whether they're from PC-based games, from movies or TV series or animation. So that's a very strong trend that's running in China. And of course, huge marketing budget in launching the games. So those were the big publisher games. Where are the independents right now? In 2015, actually there were 20 independent games that made into the top 50 position, which isn't a bad number. The revenue ranges from 1 to 5 million. But if you look at this chart and compare it against 2014, the number of independent games have dropped. So in 2014, there were about 39. So the market condition has gotten a lot tougher for smaller studios. This is why you need to partner with the big publishers to help you move into the top positions. And for Western games, games that are not from China, so they're Western, Japanese, Korean games, there were only 9 that got into the top 50 grossing in 2015. So that number has also dropped if you compare that to 2014. In 2014, there were about 29 games from outside of China. So the whole market in China has really come together to be publisher-focused, the content's becoming more and more China-focused, and the genres are very focused in MMORPG or ARPG games. I believe the slide earlier talked about there were 50% of the games were the big, massive MMO games. So that's what's going on in the market in China. What can you do as an independent to break into that market? There are still opportunities out there. IP building is one of them. If you're a small studio with an existing IP, something that you have been working on for the past few years, and you have a core audience surrounding that IP, you're in a very good position to build that IP across different platforms and go into different geographies. There's a lot of demand in the market, especially in the China market, for high quality creative content that has an original IP attached to it. There's not a whole lot of those that's happening right now. So if you're already in that position, and I would suggest to you to go find partners in the different geographies you want to expand into and work with those partners to help you expand your franchise. Another way for independent studios to grow is to get publisher finance sponsored titles. So that will allow you to work with the publisher from the very beginning. Most of the time you'll be working with an IP, whether it's a game-based or a film-based IP. You will come in with your existing game engines, with your game design, your monetization, your economy. So you would do all the back-end designing, and the publisher will work with you along the way to make sure that product is a good fit for the market that they're servicing. So this is another way for independent studios to find their way in the market right now. And this is something that I want to talk about because in a lot of the meetings I have with developers, it's a very quick session. Usually it's a 5 minute. So this is what we do. Here's my game. Please test my game. And do you want to publish my game? Actually, you need to build your pitch and to be a lot more comprehensive. What is your core expertise? Have you been building games in this genre for the last few years? If you have, that's great. If you have been building and growing your expertise in this genre, that could really lead to a future where you can have a potential successful hit. I met with the sports game team in China. They've been making soccer games for the last 3 years. The first 4 of them were total flops, but the 5th game actually caught an IP. It's not a huge IP. It's not even a Western IP, but it's a local Chinese soccer league. And they were able to take that game into the number one grossing in the sports genre. So a lot of the expertise building over the years really can help you grow into the future. And secondly, to have solid metrics in your game. If you have a game that is 30% or 50% finished and you're just showing the core creative, that might have worked 2-3 years ago where publishers or investors will fund you just based on the first look. But these days, the standards have come up greatly. So you need to have something that is more complete. And if you have proven metrics from a game engine that you've run previously that's similar to the one that you have now, those will help you build your financial model to convince the investor to hand over the check. Because no one can really bet anymore on a huge marketing budget on a game that doesn't have the proven metrics. So if you have that experience from your previous game, then this is definitely something you want to push to the front of your pitch when you're talking to the investor or publisher. And lastly, it would be a great help if you could do the math. If you're asking for, say, $2 million, what is the return that you expect from the game? And what do you think, by working with the publishers, is the return you can bring to the publisher in that relationship? Because this is something that not anybody actually talks about. When you're building your financial forecast, you want to be realistic in the projections, something that's believable. What can you deliver based on the metrics that you already know about your game? And then you do the math for them. Convince them that this is an ROI positive investment. And that's something that very much aligns the expectations. Because oftentimes, developers will come out and ask for 2 million, 3 million, 5 million, or even higher. And then, if at the end of the day, the revenue from the game is going to be just $1 million a month, that's not going to be a very positive result for anybody in the business. So you should really do the math and use those numbers to convince the person that you're talking to why your game will deliver the results. So with that, we continue to invest and build value for the companies that we work with. Over the last 4 years, we've invested in over 15 game developers from around the world. We have about 3 of them in the US, 1 in Europe, in Finland, 1 in Japan, and the rest are all in China. Some of the game developers are, I'll talk about a couple of them. One of them is a console-based team in Japan. They have successfully raised millions through crowdfunding on Kickstarter, actually. So right now they're in the process of building a cross-platform global IP and working with different partners and investors to help them achieve that goal. We have another independent game producer in China. He has released the first title. It's an IP he's been working on since college. So he started out with 20,000 core audience. And now he has millions of fans in China with his first mobile hit. And this year he's going to release the second one. So that's also a very successful IP building franchise case example from China. And then we have a top mobile studio that's very much focused on the sports genre. The team has very successful track record coming from the PC console age with the sports games. So now they're going to take that into the mobile platform and hopefully develop games across different sports titles to help them grow their business. And lastly, we have a PC studio in China. Actually, this team is led by an ex-Bungie producer. They have been working on the game for the last 5 years, and they are very, very excited about the release of this game at the end of this year. And right now they're in the process of talking to a lot of publishers and partners across different platforms, because this game has the potential to go beyond what they're currently working on. So they can go into mobile, they can go into PC, and there are actually talks about film prospects. So, you know, if you have something that looks very solid on one platform, I would highly encourage you to explore the opportunities onto different platforms, into different regions to help you grow the business. And we also invest in ad tech publishing company. There's a company called Montvista. Some of you may have heard of it. They're based out of China. They started out their business in Southeast Asia in 2013. And actually, in the last 2 years, they've grown massively. Last year, they got listed in China with the $1 billion market cap. And they have since acquired Game Analytics and NativeX as part of their goal to expand globally. So this company is very aggressive in sourcing games and working with talented studios around the world. So if you guys need an introduction to Montvista, you can come and talk to me afterwards. And recently we've invested in an analytics company based right here in San Francisco. It's called Tenjin. Tenjin is a mobile attribution aggregation analytics company. So they help the mobile advertisers analyze and fine-tune all their analytics on one platform. It's a very smart group of people working at Tenjin, and we believe they're going to do a lot of great things for mobile games and mobile apps. So with that, I hope I've shared with you a little bit about my insights on China and what we look for in the studios that we want to work with. We'll continue to invest in teams, and we believe there's still great, tremendous opportunities in this market, in the game entertainment market. So if you have any questions, feel free to catch me afterwards.
Hi, Amy. You talked about the genres of games, but what about culturalization? Like, what's the best way to gauge kind of a Western-generated IP and whether that's going to work in China?
That's a good question. And the Western IP is something that we evaluate constantly. If we go back a little bit, well, you're not gonna see it. Last year I had the slides talked about NetEase. Actually, we did Tom and Jerry and Kung Fu Panda for China, and we continue to source Western-based IPs that can translate globally. So you look at a lot of indexes in China to gauge the audience response, but we also look at some of the titles, such as Family Guy. That's a very culturally specific type of humor that's very Western based. So those are a little bit more difficult. So when you try to assess an IP, you want to find something that's more universal. That's why the Marvels, the superheroes have done really well. I think a more general mass market type of IP will work in China. And also China has some cultural restriction. So something that's really gory, like aliens or predators, those types of IPs may not work in China.
Hi, I know this topic's going to come up in later panel discussions, but given your connection into the industry, do you have any viewpoint or perspective you can give Western developers on the recent regulations that have resurfaced around approvals, licenses, and what that means to foreign developers in particular?
You mean in terms of publishing?
Correct.
Okay. Yes, that's actually a big topic that's going on in China right now. The government has increased the restrictions. So basically, you have to work with a publisher or somebody with the license to enter into China market. Every single game that goes into the App Store has to be pre-approved. So it just makes a simple process a lot more complicated. It's not just for Western studios. Actually, it applies to all studios in China. The publishers do have an advantage because they have the existing relationships. It's easier for them to get that one license. For smaller studios, it would take you a few more hoops to jump through. But it's not something that's blocking game publishing in China. So if you can find the right partner to work with you, then it's not an obstacle. I would suggest you talk to as many people as you can. If you go to China Joy or go to Asia, then meet with as many people as you can to find the right partner.
Kind of keying off that question, I think it's an important one, and thanks for answering that. Just how much do you think it's going to be a barrier moving forward, and how do you see it affecting directly your business as far as what the forecast that you've made and the number of acquisitions or investments that you're going to make as a result of this regulation?
I think the publishing regulation is not going to stop the trend of growth in China overall. The market consolidation obviously is happening because it takes a lot more money to move into the top positions. But I don't think the government's goal is to stop the growth in mobile games. They just want a part of the pie. So that's their only objective in doing this.
Thanks.
I'm Mark from Vesta. So a question on Chinese games coming to the United States. So as a representative of sort of the overall NetEase organization, do you as a venture capitalist look to potentially invest in potential partners in America who can assist with the NetEase game portfolio moving into US markets?
That's a great question. I think with every single foreign company that wants to move overseas, there are different ways of building your market entry strategy. You can do from ground up, you can acquire a studio or partner with a studio or publisher to do that. We're still in the process of exploring. So we've been building our publishing studio here in the Bay Area for the last 2 years. And we're in the process of preparing some of our local Chinese games to come out to the West. We've released 1 to 2 games already, but we're still in the process of figuring that out. So I would say for each company, they have a different strategy of coming to the West. And for us, I think we're very much open to partnerships along with our own team building.
Thanks for a great presentation, Amy.
Thanks.